the truth is that these challenges in my business really brought up a lot of feelings of insecurity for me about my purpose, about my worthiness. And I realized, as I've reflected and not been so in it, I've realized that a lot of my old overachiever tendencies have gotten activated as a business owner. Welcome to the Unconditionally Worthy Podcast. In this podcast, I will guide you on your journey to connect with the true source of your self-worth. I'm your host, Dr. Adia Gooden, a licensed clinical psychologist who believes deeply that you are worthy unconditionally. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Unconditionally Worthy Podcast. I am back doing a solo episode. This is episode 98, season 6 of the Unconditionally Worthy Podcast. And as always, I am so grateful for you listening. I actually have done maybe one true solo episode this season. So I've been lacking a little bit on the solo episodes, and we are going to be rounding out this season 6, with 3 solo episodes. So you'll get to hear a lot from me in the next few episodes. And this episode is about how this year has been for me. And it's been a hard year. It has not been all bad by any measure, right? There have certainly been moments of joy and connection and love and gratitude and abundance. There have certainly been all of those things for me this year. And it has also been hard. It has been hard in a number of ways. And I started out the year with some really big goals and plans for my business. And I met very few of them. And then my themes for this year were fun and ease. And ironically, or maybe not ironically, I struggled with both of these things. I also, because of these challenges I was experiencing, kind of experienced a resurgence of self-worth challenges that I thought I had really resolved, and have been reminded in this year of the ongoing nature of our self-worth journeys. And I'm sharing all of this with you. We're going to dig into this. I'm going to tell you more in this episode, but I'm sharing this with you because I want to be open and honest about my own self-worth journey, not just where I've been. There are many episodes about my self-worth journey and what brought me to this point, but I also want to be honest about where I'm at now and how I'm moving through the challenging periods of my life. Because I think the older I get, the more mature, the more wise I become, the more I realize that you really cannot avoid challenges in life, right? Like there are some challenges that, yes, you can avoid. There are some challenges that we bring on ourselves and we do our best to kind of not do that. But sometimes life be lifing, right? Sometimes there are just things that come up, things that we didn't plan, things that we didn't want, things that we didn't expect, that we have to move through. And some of those things sometimes cause us to question our self-worth. So I want to share with you the challenges that I've been experiencing and how I have been moving through them in the hopes that it supports you on your self-worth journey and moving through your own challenges. So one of the biggest sources of challenges in my life this year was my business. I went out on my own and started working for myself full time in March of 2021. And my business really started off with a lot of success. Last year, I experienced a lot of success, both financially and in terms of speaking opportunities. So I was getting lots of incoming speaking requests. I made more money than I expected last year, and I took a 3-month maternity leave that I self-funded. And so last year was a really great year for my business. And I came into this year, into 2023, thinking that this would be even better, right? Like I wasn't going to take a maternity leave. I was a more experienced business owner. I thought, of course, like this year is going to be even better. And I made some really big goals for myself, and I didn't meet them. I really was not prepared when things did not go the way that I planned. And, in short, the speaking engagements that had been really flowing before slowed to a trickle. And so did my revenue from the speaking engagements, and my revenue went down from other courses and programs. And that was really hard and scary. And in response to this slowdown, I spent more time marketing, reaching out to people, trying to sort of make things happen, to fill the gap. And that is really outside of my comfort zone, outside of my zone of genius. It's not something that I enjoy doing. It's something that, I feel like I've needed to get better at, but I was just spending a lot of time doing things that I didn't feel good at, that were not fulfilling, that did not connect me to, my purpose and my gifts, and less time doing the things that I love, which is speaking and coaching and helping people to transform on their self-worth journey. And so the end of all of this, I was feeling burned out and disillusioned, right? Sort of frustrated by the fact that all of this effort I was putting in was not producing the result that I hoped for, and sort of burned out on this marketing, content creation treadmill, hamster wheel, right? That I felt like I had to be on to try to pull some success out of my business. And the truth is that these challenges in my business really brought up a lot of feelings of insecurity for me about my purpose, about my worthiness. And I realized, as I've reflected and not been so in it, I've realized that a lot of my old overachiever tendencies have gotten activated as a business owner, right? And so I was no longer sort of trying to prove that I was worthy, but I really felt like I needed to prove that my business was worthy and that I was worthy as an entrepreneur and a business owner, right? Both that I was doing all the things that would make me successful, and that I was doing enough to make sure that people would, sign up for a coaching program or buy an online course enrollment or whatever it was. But I really felt like I had to overdo, overextend, overwork, do all of the things perfectly in order to be successful. And that was exhausting, and predictably led to me feeling burned out and frustrated and, disconnected and not really happy and satisfied. And so I also think because I wasn't doing the things that I truly love, because, the speaking opportunities weren't coming, and, my business was sort of in flux, I also sort of started to question whether what I have to offer, whether my gifts were good enough, right? Sort of questioning whether people really want what I have to offer, what I'm passionate about. And that was hard. I went through a lot of emotions during this time, right? Feelings of guilt, feelings of fear, feelings of anxiety, feelings of confusion. And on top of the sort of, maybe we'd call it a little bit existential piece around, questioning some of my purpose and my gifts and, whether people want what I have to offer, there was another piece, which is, we are a 2-income household, right? Jason, my husband, contributes and I contribute financially. And so when I wasn't able to do that at the same level, it was really incredibly stressful and it was scary. And it was really hard to stay grounded in the truth of who I am, in the fact that I know I'm here to help people transform their lives. It was really hard to ground in that truth when income wasn't flowing, and income that we needed because, if you've ever had a baby, you'll know that expenses go up incredibly with a baby. So we had this double whammy of our expenses being much higher because we have a baby, and my income being lower. And so it was really a hard time. It was very hard. And thankfully, we made it through that period. I had to make some tough decisions in my business to help turn things around, things that I didn't want to do, but needed to happen. And I'm really grateful. I don't know if I would say I'm totally on the other side, but things are much better. Speaking engagements are flowing again. Revenue income is flowing again. Things are much better. I'm still figuring things out, but it's much better. And so I wanted to share that because I don't want you to think that everything is perfect in my life and that I have it all figured out. And I want you to know that I'm also human, and I want you to hear that as a reminder that it's okay for you to be human as well, right? That you don't have to have it perfectly figured out, that you get to be human. And I thought I'd also share some of the things that really have helped me move through this period without like totally freaking out, right? And like down spiraling. So one of the things I did is I talked to my close friends and my husband about what was going on. I think when we are struggling, it can be really easy to get caught up in shame and blame and then to hide from the people who love us, right? To feel like we are unworthy, to feel like we are the worst people ever, to feel like we just make awful mistakes and we're failures and all of those things, right? And that when we feel that way, when we feel unworthy in that way, very often we start to hide, right? We withdraw. And I'm not saying that you should share your challenges on social media with the world. Like I did not. I may do that now as I've come through it and I'm in a more grounded place. Like social media is not a great place to share something when you're in the midst of it and processing it because it's not always a safe space. So I'm not suggesting you do that, but I do think that it's really helpful to reach out to people that you trust, people that love you, and share with them what you're going through, share with them your fears, and allow them to remind you that you are worthy. Allow them to remind you that you are loved. Allow them to remind you that, allow them to hold the hope that things will get better. Allow them to hold the truth that this is a period of time, that this is a season and it will pass, right? I want you to know that you don't have to go through it on your own. The other thing that I did is that I returned to some spiritual teachings in the form of books and podcasts that really grounded me in the things that I believe to be true about myself and the world and my purpose. And part of that is remembering that, really what I need to focus on is not, what are my big revenue goals and what's the impact and how many, hundreds of followers do I have and people on my email list and blah, blah, blah. But really what I have to focus on is who is in my life right now that I can be a blessing to? How am I here to serve today? Right? So becoming kind of like hyper present, hyper local in a time-based setting, in a time-based framework around what is it that I have to do today? What is it that I can do today? How can I use my gifts today? How can I bless someone today? And that grounding really helped me. And two of the spiritual teachers that I go back to a lot because they resonate with me. One is Eckhart Tolle, and he, has a couple of books that are really helpful. There's also a podcast on his teachings. And part of the reminder is like your purpose is what you are doing in this moment. So in that framework, my purpose in this moment is to record this podcast. Right? Like that's it. Not to think about how many downloads will it get and how am I going to share it on social media, but like to record this podcast with the intention of helping and blessing people. Right. And then the other teacher is Marianne Williamson. And one of the things that she talks about is sending love to the people that you will encounter and asking to be guided by divine wisdom, intelligence, the universe, God, whatever you believe in, to be a blessing, right? To be guided to show up and bless and help people in the way that you are meant to. And grounding in that teaching really helped and supported me during a time when I felt confused, when I felt disoriented, when I felt unsure, when I felt scared and anxious, when I felt like I didn't know like what I was going to do next or what I needed to do next. And so those teachings really helped me. And I actually think I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in the next episode. So stay tuned. The other thing I did is I allowed myself to feel my feelings, right? So often when we're having challenging experiences, we judge ourselves for what we feel, right? And use a therapy framework I use called acceptance and commitment therapy. We talk about clean pain and dirty pain. In Buddhism, it's arrow 1 and arrow 2. But the essential idea is that arrow 1 or the clean pain is, it is hard not to be making the money that you thought you were going to make and that you need to make, right? Like it's hard, right? And you may feel a lot of things around that. You might feel anxiety. You might feel stress. You might feel fear. You might feel guilt, right? But then the dirty pain is the judgment of yourself for getting into this situation. Is the what's wrong with you? You should have made different decisions. Why did you do that? You shouldn't have da 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 da. And then the level of like, why are you feeling bad? You shouldn't be feeling bad. You just need to get it together, right? So we can create suffering for ourselves by judging ourselves and our feelings. And you all hear me talk about self-compassion all of the time. Because I use it all the time and it works. But I use self-compassion to really help me ground, right? And to soothe myself and to comfort myself when I was feeling all of these feelings that I'm describing, so that I wasn't down spiraling and I wasn't judging myself. Or if I did judge myself, because, I did not, get through this judgment free, but that I wasn't, engaging in self-loathing and self-blame in a way that was unhelpful, or just like losing myself in that self-criticism. And so that really helped me, allowing myself to feel my feelings. And then one of the last things I'll share that was really helpful for me is that I put my experience into context, right? It would have been very easy for me to just feel like, well, I'm sort of failing at business. I am not doing this well. And it's all about me and my mistakes. And did I make mistakes? Yes. I'm a new business owner, right? Like I am learning all of the time. And there are things that I have made mistakes around. And it was also really important to put the challenges that I experience in business into the context of what's happening with the economy, right? Like we have major multinational corporations laying off hundreds or thousands of people. We have corporations filing for bankruptcy. We have downsizing. We have all of these things. And so on two levels, one, if all of these companies are, laying people off and downsizing, the likelihood that they are going to spend a pretty penny on hiring me as a speaker, right, becomes lower. So that's one thing. And two, this business slowdown is something that is being experienced at all levels. It's not something that is just personal to me. And so that doesn't necessarily make it easier, but it means that this is not just me failing. This is my business navigating a recession in the economy. And so that also helped. And so there are many ways that you can put your challenge and your experience into context. And I think that's really, really important. I just thought of one other thing that I want to share. I think it's also important to sort of put your challenge in the context of your life and who you are overall. Like when we're going through a hard time, and I definitely felt this, it can be so easy to sort of get so zoned in on the current moment that you forget about all of the rest of your successes, your accomplishments, right? So if you're going through a breakup, it can feel like, I'll never find someone who loves me. It never works out. Right? Like it can just feel like your whole life is a breakup. But the truth is that you probably have had connected relationships and you have felt love and you do have friends who love you and family members who you're connected to, and you do have healthy relationships in other aspects of your life. And so putting your experience, your challenging experience into context, contextualizing it can help relieve the stress around feeling like this is all of you or all of your life. And so so sort of the context, the societal context is really helpful, and your personal life timeline context, who you are as a human being context, can be really helpful. Okay, so I also wanted to share about some personal challenges. You know, as I mentioned before, my themes for 2023 were ease and fun, right? Like I thought, I want this year to be filled with ease and fun. Now, granted, I set these themes kind of haphazardly. I did not make specific plans of how I was going to make these things happen. I just set them out. And it was so funny because I have a really good friend who we have, these long, deep conversations periodically every couple of months. And she would often be like, remember your themes. And I was like, oh yeah, like I forgot. So it was helpful to have that accountability, but I still struggled. I struggled with fun and I struggled with ease this year. And I think one of the reasons those things were harder for me to access and cultivate is the fact that I'm a new mom. And I still really love being a mom, and I love being Amani's mom and seeing her grow and develop in ways that really amaze me every day. And I think I also just felt I was more in touch with the challenge of being a mom and also having financial constraints this year, right? I think last year I was at the haze of new motherhood and I just didn't really fully realize, I didn't fully experience, I wasn't in touch with how my free time, rest time, and play time were really limited by having a baby. And as a mom, it's been harder for me to access the things I used to do for fun, the things my husband and I do enjoy doing for fun and to connect, and the time that I would spend resting and relaxing. And if you add to that, so there's sort of like the time constraints, the literal logistically, right? Like, when do you have childcare and when are you responsible for taking care of your child? And then add to that a layer of, financial constraints, which means that anytime you do a date night or you go out, like you got to pay someone to watch your child in addition to whatever you're going and doing, right? All of these things have made it really hard. And so this fun and ease thing is definitely a work in progress for me. I think in general, I chose those words because those are not my normal modes of being, right? Like that is not necessarily my normal way of operating. And I want my life to be filled with more fun and ease. And it's clearly going to take more than 1 year and more intention than just setting the themes or the words at the beginning of the year. And one of the things that's helped me most with navigating this is reminding myself that I'm not struggling with this because I'm doing something wrong, right? And, these are the realities of my life right now, right? Being a mom, having that responsibility. And, one of the things I talk about at times is that even the most wonderful things in our lives often come with losses, right? And I think motherhood is one of those things, right? It's so wonderful and amazing in many ways. And there is a loss of freedom. There is a loss of flexibility. There is a loss of time. There's a loss of, financial, availability of finances to do whatever I want to do with them, right? And so I think just being kind and compassionate with myself around the realities of this time and this life period, and seeing this challenge as an invitation to reimagine what fun looks like in this current stage. And I think there are certainly ways in which Amani helps me with this, with her play and playing with her. And I think it's an ongoing process, especially with thinking about what fun that's just for me, what it looks like, what fun for Jason and I looks like during this stage. I've also noticed in this process and in this year that there have been times when I will be like enjoying this lovely, simple weekend with Jason and Amani, and we're going to the park or we're going to brunch, or, like we just have a simple day and like it's really lovely. And then I go on social media and I see somebody is posting about their trip to some fantastic looking place, and I'm suddenly feeling not so happy, right? And less satisfied with my life that, moments before felt really good. And so one of the things that has helped me with this is to limit my time, the time I'm spending on social media. And that has been really helpful, right? To set time limits, to set, time of day limits, so that I am not mindlessly going on these apps that then make me feel less happy with my life. And, there's research that shows that that is what social media can do. And so that is what I'm doing to help myself really tune in and appreciate the simple moments, because, I don't have access to some of the bigger, sexier, shinier ways of having fun right now, or it's harder for me to access. And so it's even more important for me to appreciate and lean into the simple things. And I think in that also to remind myself that I am worthy of it, right? Even if it's harder to access right now, reminding myself that I am worthy of making time for things that are fun for me, for things that make my life easy. And this is something that's ongoing and I'm leaning into. And I hope that you'll hear this and hear it as a reminder that even if life is feeling really fun and easy for you right now, lean in, enjoy, soak it in. And if life is not feeling fun and easy for you right now, to take this as an invitation to notice and get curious about ways that you can bring more of that into your life. And then also be kind and compassionate with yourself with the constraints on having fun and ease in your life. So I think, some of the lessons that I'm taking away from this year are, the reminder that our journeys really evolve, and as we experience new challenges and growth and new levels of evolution in our life. And we may have gotten to a point in our lives where we feel confident in our unconditional self-worth, and then we lose something. And it could be an identity, could be a relationship, could be, a job, and that we lose that thing that was important to us. And suddenly we are sort of thrown back into some self-worth work and invited to reconnect to the truth of who we are without that thing, without that job, without that relationship, without that identity that was helping us to feel worthy. And this doesn't mean that you've done something wrong. It doesn't mean that you missed the mark. It just means that you're being invited into a deeper level of connecting with your worthiness. And I think the other sort of piece that I want to leave you with is that this is why the practices and the strategies that I offer through the podcast, through the Date Yourself course, through my Unconditionally Worthy group coaching program, that they're not tasks to check off a list, right? They're not things that you're like, okay, great, practice self-compassion, done with that. Okay, great, I forgave myself, done with that. These are ongoing practices to keep in your tool belt, to keep with you on your journey. And they are ways of being, ways of showing up with and for yourself, no matter what is going on, no matter where your self-worth journey leads you. And, wherever you are on your journey, your self-worth journey, I hope that listening to this episode helps you know that you're not alone when you experience life challenges. I hope it reminds you that going through difficult times is not a sign that you are unworthy. It may be an invitation. It may be a sign to return to the practices and the things that affirm your worth. And the truth is that you are unconditionally worthy no matter what happens. And it is in embracing this truth and practicing the things that remind you of this truth of who you are, that you connect to the light within that guides you forward through even the darkest of times. Okay, so before we end this episode, I have a hard announcement to make. And that announcement is that I will be pausing the Unconditionally Worthy podcast indefinitely after this season. Season 6 ends with the 100th episode of the podcast, and that will be the last episode for a while. This podcast is one of the biggest, if not the biggest investment I have made in my business. It has never been sponsored. I've, never done ads from an outside company or business. And so it really has just been money, time, energy that I have poured into the podcast. And I had an amazing podcast management team and company that helped me produce the episodes starting from episode 1. And they had been a great help. And I had to make the hard decision earlier this year, really earlier this season, that I had to end my podcast management relationship. And so I am actually self-producing these last handful of episodes because the financial investment just wasn't sustainable for me anymore. And so it's hard. I have really sincerely enjoyed making this podcast, sharing solo episodes, interviewing guests. I have so enjoyed it. And it's been so encouraging and supportive to hear how it's helped you, to see how it's touched people from around the world. And it's sad to be pausing. My hope is that I'll be able to resume the podcast at some point in the future when it is more sustainable financially and energetically. And there are 2 more episodes that are coming this season. So don't tap out now. There are 2 more episodes, but I just wanted to give you a heads up. But I do want to sincerely thank you for listening and sharing and leaving ratings and reviews. I so appreciate your support. So stay tuned for the last 2 episodes. Thanks for joining me this week on the Unconditionally Worthy podcast. Make sure to visit my website, dradiagooden.com, and subscribe to the show